Right, this is a Levaya that I was hoping I wouldn't have to officiate at. As we say goodbye to our very close and dear friend, Dr. Rosa Bass. It's like Susan Borger, Aleha Shalom. First, I would like to ask everyone to please put your phones on vibrate. There's, in addition to the overflowing group of people that are here to show kavod to Susan's memory, we have a number of distinguished rabbanim, and in no particular order: Rabbi Goodney, Rabbi Leibowitz, Rabbi Stephen Yadanik, Rabbi Yosef Adler, Rabbi Ezra Wiener, Rabbi Eli Michel, Rabbi Gedalia Jaffe, Rabbi Bill Zinkin, Rabbi Ryan Schwartz. I'd like to now ask Rabbi Kaufman, the Rabbi of Congregation, all of them as decided to put it home.
נכתב לדוד, שמני עיר כי תסיסי בוך. אמרת אדוני יוצאתי לא סיבה בברך. ובגושים שבו אצלנו להגיד פרפקציה בו. ירדו עצבויסם לכם ההורו, ולסיך תסכים איתנו, ולעשות שמויסם לעשות סוי. עינינו לא ספוקים וכיסי, יצאתם נכתרו לי. אבל נפלי בנעינים אף נחלה שפרו לי. אברך אסא דינו ישיר יוצאני אף ליבוי סיסוני פרויסי. שביסי אדוני באמת ניסוני כמיני בנו. ואין שמח מגיבי עדו כבודי אכתסר ישכן בבטח. ולא יסעזוי נפשי לשאול, לא יסיתים חסיפו ישוחס. ודיעני ערך חיים סייב סמוך כדס פניך. ואימא יסכימים חנצה.
I was very close to Susan for many years. I traveled carpool together with Susan and other friends to the OU back and forth by bus and by train. And my wife and I had a very close relationship with her. And I want to share with you a perspective on how I view her life. Susan was a survivor. She was born in a displaced person camp in 1947 in Welser, Germany. Her parents were Holocaust survivors. She was a second-generation survivor, and her entire life she was a survivor. This formed her personality. She had fears and depressions and pain that she lived with throughout her life. In her youth, she lived in Brooklyn. She attended Yeshiva Baal Moshe, then Central High School, Brooklyn College, Long Island University. She received a master in education. But throughout her life, Susan had many challenges. Her marriage didn't work out for her. That was a challenge. She very much wanted to remarry. She had she had various relationships that for various reasons, health reasons, other reasons, did not work out. She was a single mother. She raised her children single-handedly by herself at great difficulty. I remember many times having conversations with her about how difficult that was. And she used to feel terrible. Jeffrey would come home in the evening and she was still at work. Professionally, she worked as a human resource person at the OU. She did a great job, but even at the OU, those of you that knew her well knew that there were many challenges that she had to face. Susan was at ground zero on 9/11. She was there. She saw the flames and the smoke. The memories endured with her the rest of her life. She lived with that, with the memory of the horrors. Finally, Susan found some peace in Florida. She was so happy in Florida. And then, unfortunately, she was stricken with cancer. It was discovered at an advanced stage. For the past 3 years, she continued to be a survivor. She outlived the addictions, but she had multiple operations, hospital stays, procedures. So her whole life was a long series of challenges. But I don't think that that's the way to remember Susan. And I have a completely different picture of Susan's life. My mother, Leah Shalom, developed cancer the last few years of her life. She was sick with cancer. And about 3 or 4 weeks before she passed away, she was walking with my father, and she was very frail and weak. And she saw a rose bush. And she commented to my father, she recited the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Shoshana, Bein HaChochim, like a rose among the thorns. And what my mother was saying was itself, there is tremendous beauty to be found in life. And Susan her Hebrew name was Sarah Rosa. Susan Rosa comes from the rose. And Susan was Kishoshana Bein HaChochim. She was like a rose among the thorns, Kereyosi Bein Habanos. That's how our beloved Susan was among her peers and friends. There were a lot of thorns that accompanied her through life, but she was a Shoshana Bein HaChochim. She was a beautiful rose among the thorns. She had tremendous inner strength. She was fearless. She worked hard. She was very devoted to her job. Like a rose, she loved and appreciated beauty, and she had a very strong sense of aesthetics. She had unbelievable inner strength. She was super talented. She was very, very competent. She did a terrific job at the OU, and I omitted to mention Rabbi Rabinowitz from the OU was here as well. She was creative, expressive. I still remember with the OU every year has a Purim a Hanukkah get together. She was the one that wrote the Gramen. They were hysterical, and Susan could be a little bit biting in the way she expressed herself, but she was careful not to hurt anybody's feelings. She had an infectious laugh. I used to travel on the train with Susan and her entourage, I'll call them, and they used to sort of party on the train. And I made sure to distance myself from them because I didn't want to be associated with that wild group of ladies that were sitting in front of the car making a ruckus that everybody in the car knew about. And the conductor was good friends. He used to join them for the parties. She was passionate. She was constantly sending out emails about things that she was concerned about to all her contacts about Israel and about the Jewish people. She had uncompromising values and principles. She was dedicated to her parents. She was a terrific daughter. She was extremely devoted to her friends. Judy Goldstein told me that when her sister-in-law passed away, about a year ago, Susan should not have come to the Levaya because she was very afraid as she faced her own situations with great fear. But there was Susan. She showed up. I remember when she came to Levaya, and Judy said, "Why are you here?" She said, "How could I not come to this Levaya?" With serious handicaps, she raised 3 wonderful children, very special family. She had wonderful daughters-in-law, and son-in-law, Karen and Mark, Ellie and Iris, Jeffrey, and Aviva, and she had wonderful grandchildren, Ariel, Danielle, David, Renee, Max, and Ali, and his sister Sheila is here as well. She was very close to Susan was Zocha to see Jeffrey stand under the chuppah with his wife, his wonderful wife Aviva. She made it there with her perseverance. She was like a Sarah. She was tough on the outside, but she had a heart of gold on the inside. And she faced her final illness with enormous courage, strength, and determination. About 2 weeks ago, I went to Menachem Mobile. An old friend of mine, a family of an old friend, passed away, and he also had a lot of challenges in his life, and he was sick for the last 5, 6 years. He was comatose, and I shared with the family a thought that I had said in shul 2 weeks ago as well. The Parsha Chayei Sarah details the passing of Sarah, the burial, purchase of the burial plot. Why would we call it Chayei Sarah? We should call it Misa Sarah. So I thought Avram Avinu, after returning from the Akedah, and Avram must have been so elated that his son Yitzchak, he fulfilled the will of Hashem, put him on the Mizbeach, but then he did not have to sacrifice Yitzchak. Then he comes home and he discovers that his wife had passed away at what then was a relatively young age. What a tragedy. And Avram Avinu could have been focused on Misa Sarah, the tragedy of the passing of Sarah under those circumstances. But Avram Avinu was rather focused on Chayei Sarah, on the beautiful days of the life of Sarah. And that's how, and I shared that with this family, that you have to focus on the beautiful parts. There are challenges in life, but you have to focus on the beauty. Susan's full name is Sarah Rosa. Sarah, like Sarah Imenu, it was Chayei Sarah. Yes, she lived with certain handicaps, but that made her all the more beautiful. The Shoshana Beinachotim, Sarah Rosa, because she overcame all those challenges that she had to face in life, and the inner beauty of Susan, her personality, things that she did, that shined forth in the most magnificent way. And Susan should, even in her passing, she should continue to be a tremendous source of inspiration. How many people are here that were close to Susan? It should be especially inspiration for the family. She was a wonderful and outstanding person. Shoshana Bein HaChotim, a rose among the thorns. I'm now going to call on Daniel Borger, his granddaughter.
Grandma Susan, or Mama as I like to call her, taught me so much without even trying. She always tried to maximize her productivity, even when it was spending time with her grandkids. She had to be doing something concrete with us rather than just sitting around. So time with Grandma meant going to the fabric store, learning how to sew, or doing anything outdoors. Nothing gave her more pleasure than seeing a need and trying to fill it. The lesson that will stick with me forever is her ability to appreciate life. She never took a second of her life for granted. She really did live life to the fullest. As a former English major and teacher, Grandma was a grammar expert, and nothing made her crazier than when people misuse the words lying and laying. So in her honor, and to make sure she is smiling down on all of us this morning, what is the difference between lay and lie? You lie down, but you lay something down. The past tense of lay is laid, but be careful with the past tense of lie. There are two options. When to use lay. To lay is to set something in a resting position. For example, I don't like to lay my purse on the floor. A lie is an untruth. However, it's the verb form of lie that people find difficult to distinguish from lay. The verb lie means to tell a falsehood. However, lie can also mean to recline or to rest in a flat position. For example, the fat cat likes to lie in the sun. In the present tense, you often use a direct object with lay. However, lie can't take a direct object. But wait, there's still one more thing you need to know. When you are talking about reclining, the past tense of lie is lay. For example, yesterday he lay down to sleep at 10 o'clock. Tonight he won't lie down until midnight. I don't know why Hashem took my grandma from us so early. Perhaps it's because he needed to get stuff done up there and he needed to make it happen. I love you and I'll miss you.
Susan's granddaughter, Ariel.
No, I'm sure he did it for me. Sitting next to a bunch of strangers on an is not exactly where I pictured each 2 years ago. 2 years is a long time, or 3, when you take advantage of it, but it still doesn't seem to have been what I'd like to call enough. You could prepare just about everything, like my dad, and be prepared for just about everything, like me. Thanks, Mom and Dad. And yet, still not be ready for this. My grandmother, Allah Shalom, has taught me more than I could ever begin to explain. One of the most important lessons I hope to take with me is never to take for granted the time that I'm given to spend with people on this earth. When my grandma was diagnosed a couple of years ago, I wasn't sure how much longer I'd be zochah to speak to her or hear her voice talk back to me. That freaked me out, so as some Borgers do, I began to plan. To write things down. Not in spreadsheets exactly, but in a letter to my grandmother. Grandma, I'm writing this now because I know there will come a time where I won't be able to recall a conversation that we had a few minutes ago. I can't imagine it yet, and I hope it's not soon, but it's difficult, and it will only get harder to put into words as time goes on. I have voicemails from you that I know never to delete, because that would be what's left for me from our Erev Shabbos conversations. I guess starting chronologically would make the most sense. When I was starting elementary school, you taught me small science lessons through experiments in your house. The first time I learned what evaporation was with you in your kitchen. You boiled a pot with water for a while, showed me what remained, and asked where it went. I may have been amazed at first, but then I realized that I would have to listen to some really big words and a long explanation of how and why that was scientifically possible. It took me some time, or maybe a few years, to understand that what you were saying actually had value. But after I did, I started reporting back to you about what I was learning in science class. You loved it. You would constantly offer me to come over and review the topic that I was learning in class. I called you when I got to the hotel this summer. This is in 2016. I was standing there and talking to you about how you were feeling and about my tefillah. Obviously, I was davening for a refuah for you, or at least minimal pain, but you asked me to daven for something else, for someone else. I wasn't expecting it at the time. Because to be perfectly honest, the only thing occupying my mind was begging Hashem for this illness not to take my grandma from me and my family. But you had others first on the list, not yourself. I didn't know how that was possible, but you did it. This is the greatest lesson. Even when I'm going through a challenging time, taking a difficult exam or unsure about what to do just in general, there are hardships greater than my own that I should prioritize. And while my situation might be tough, I can get through it and put others before myself, just like you did. Later that year, I came to visit you at your house and sat next to your bed while telling you all about my week. I told you the classes I was taking this year, upcoming tests, grades that had just been returned to me, and you stopped me and said, "Don't kill yourself over this stuff. I want you to go out, have a boyfriend, go to parties, have fun, and then you can worry about school." The thing is, if I would be doing all of those things, I wouldn't have had the chance to see your face light up or hear your smile through the phone when I tell you that I feel like my efforts in a certain class has really paid off. Grandma, I can't begin to imagine what it will be like when I cannot call you before every Shabbos. To be perfectly honest, there's something about talking to you that I knew always lifted my bad mood. There were times during the week that I knew exactly what to do to stop my crankiness. Pick up the phone and call. Whether it was hearing random stories that I knew might take a very long time to end, hence delaying the start of my work, or just knowing that you were still there on the other line, always happy to talk to me. I loved it and may have taken it for granted sometimes. I have to tell you though, that many times it has crossed my mind that the more I talk to you, the more I call you, the harder this will be for me when I have to face the fact that you're no longer here. When my grandmother was diagnosed, it took me by surprise. One day she woke up and spoke to me about how nice the weather was in Florida and how I should just come live with her instead of staying in the freezing cold tri-state area. She sounded so happy, meeting new people by the pool, playing mahjong, and would tell me about her bike rides around Century Village. I never worried that Florida was changing her, because she never left out that it rains 200 times more there and that there were thousands more bugs and mosquitoes. She was real. She was blunt. She was strong. She was determined. She was stubborn. I think that's genetic. She was principled. She valued family. She put others first, and I have a lot to learn from her.
Thank you, Karen.
Mom, on behalf of your children, Ellie, Jeffrey, and myself, we would like to publicly ask for them. Thank you all for coming. We are here today to remember and honor my mother, Susan Borger. My mother was not always an angel. She was not always easy to deal with. She was hypercritical and had unreasonably high expectations. But she was my superhero. She was born to Holocaust survivors in a DP camp in Germany and came to the US at age 5. She started preschool, where she took it upon herself not only to learn English, but to then go home and teach her parents English. In elementary school, my mother went to the library and checked out a book by Emily Post. She had been invited to a friend's house for dinner, and she wanted to make sure that she didn't look too much like a poor immigrant, a Grina, and she wanted to make sure that she had good manners and proper table etiquette. And so began the trend in my mother's life. She became a self-taught expert in any number of things. Beyond her master's degree in education and working full-time, she taught herself botany, landscape architecture, interior design, sewing, office management, office design, just to name a few subjects mastered from a library. She was constantly reading and absorbing information. She could hold an intelligent conversation with anyone on almost any subject. She had strong opinions and would debate you unmercifully if you dared question or knock her opinion. Her retention of information was incredible. She would yell out answers on Jeopardy with incredible speed and accuracy, and then tell you an anecdote about how she came to know that particular piece of trivia. Several years ago, I was doing a home renovation and temporarily moved into my mom's house. It was early April, and my mom would drive the kids to school in the morning. On the drive, she would point out various flowers along the route. My children were 3 and 5 at the time, and in a 1-hour drive over a 1-month period, my children learned to read road signs and learned to recognize the local horticulture. It was pretty amazing when my 3-year-old, Renee, yelled out, "Look, Mom, that's forsythia." There was one thing, however, that no matter how she tried, she failed to master in epic proportions, and that was cooking. If you ever wondered why Ellie, Jeffrey, and I were so thin, and short, the answer is not genetics. My mother didn't feed us. Breakfast consisted of soggy cereal and milk. Lunch was cottage cheese sprinkled with cinnamon, or overcooked pasta, or soggy tuna sandwiches. Dinner and Shabbat was always the same thing, chicken. Now, Mom's idea of making chicken consisted of drowning chicken in paprika, which she insisted had no taste, but just served to give the chicken some color. She would place the chicken in the oven until it dried out, and voila, dinner was served. Mom couldn't even handle the frozen Kinneret challah. They came out burned, and we lovingly referred to it as chocolate challah. Yet, despite her ineptitude at cooking, she refused to buy prepared meals. Yesterday, while my brothers and I were sitting in the hospice making funeral arrangements, I received a text from my son David. And it said, "Mom, I think for Thanksgiving we should all have a meal as a family with Ellie and Jeff and their kids. It should be homemade stuff, nothing bought, because grandma." As a mom, she was my biggest critic, but also my biggest cheerleader. When I would slack off in school, my mother would tell me that if I didn't start picking up my grades, I would end up working at Kmart. Sometimes she said birthday. And so I picked up my grades, attended a good college, and went to medical school. And when I decided to venture out on my own in private practice, she came along acting as my office manager, biller, and collector. And if you ever open a business, you want your mother in collections, because my mother wasn't letting anyone get away without paying bills. There was one procedure that I would occasionally perform in the office that one particular insurance repeatedly refused to pay for. My mom would bill and rebill, but to no avail. We're not talking about big money procedure. It was just a few dollars, but my mom was not going to let them get away with it. So Mom called the insurance company to find out why the bills were repeatedly denied. She was informed that she was not coding the procedure properly, despite all the other insurances paying for it just the way it was. The gentleman on the phone was not allowed to tell my mother exactly how to correct the code in order to get paid, but he was also not allowed to hang up on anyone calling. And so began a battle of wills. Mom would not let him off the phone, and he would not give my mother the information. So after a long and non-productive call, my mom had a brilliant idea. She took the phone into the waiting room, placed the call on speaker, and publicly pronounced, "I want everyone to know in this waiting room that XYZ Insurance is not paying the doctor for taking care of the patients." And so the gentleman relented. Still not allowed to tell my mother exactly what to do, he directed her to the page and line in the manual that explained what to do. My mother, still not satisfied, said, "You mean if I place a dash and the number 25 before the procedure code and resubmit it, you will pay her?" And he relented and said yes. I'm going to miss my mom. I'm going to miss my critic, my cheerleader, guardian, confidant, and advisor. Over the last few years, there have been many times that I wanted to call my mom to get her advice or just her support, and I've had to hold myself back because I didn't want my mom to worry about me when she had her own problems to deal with. It's made me realize just how much I have relied on my mom all these years. I've lost my superhero.
Susan's brother wanted to get back to David. Come.
Wasn't planning on saying anything, but the long flight home yesterday from Florida, I had a few ideas. So I wanted to bring to your attention. Of course, we know it's our Suvia Sora, so I thought about the parsha of the week. A few weeks ago, Chaya Sora, the obvious question that the rabbi referred to is, why do we call Chaya Sora when this is really the end of the Sora? However, as we know from, we said by Yaakov Avinu Lomes, How can that be? The bar says, you see him, he was put into put into a chamber, and he was taken care of by the Egyptians, so we know he died. The thing, of course, it says that Yaakov didn't die because of his family. His children lived on. And with our Sarah here, we see with the children, the 3 children and their grandchildren, the memories of Sarah will live on, and in our minds, she really hasn't died. Again, regarding to this, the Maaseh Albo Sin on the bottom, and Parsha talks about after Akedah Yitzchak, we find out that then Sarah dies, but we learned that we thought that Sarah was tricked by the Satan and was told that Sarah actually was dead. I mean, that Yitzchak had died, and the shock killed her. However, there was another interpretation I saw that if you look at the Parsha, what does it say right after talking about the Akedah? It says it was found out that Rivka was born. At that point, Sarah was worried about her family. She was worried about the continuation of her family. She was worried that Yitzchak, who would he marry, with the continuation of the theme of Abraham and being the Jewish family where they continue. And I think that's what's happened with Susie. You know, Susie finally was worried always about Jeffrey. What's going to happen with Jeffrey? She saw 6 months ago, so more that Jeffrey finally found a mate and finally got married and it has a lovely wife. And now Susie saw the family's now complete. And now it's time that she could leave this world, even though she fought very hard with her cancer. She outlived all of her other contemporaries who had the same condition when she started. But she knew that she had to make sure that the family would be complete. She saw that happen, and she saw after the last few months how beautiful her family was, and how devoted they were. And I'm amazed also at the daughters-in-law, how devoted they were to Susie. Especially, there's always this rivalry, this set of animosity between a daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law. And this family there, I did not see it. It just the chesed that was going on with the 2 daughters-in-law was really beautiful to see, and I'm sure Susie's very happy about that. Finally, another thought. We talk about the hesped with Abraham. It says that Abraham, 2 things when he found about Sarah. He said that he made a hesped for Sarah, and he cried about her. So I saw an article that Rabbi Steve Hirsch-Weinberg said that there's two types of mourning. There's emotional mourning and there's intellectual mourning. Emotional mourning is just a general feeling of a loss, like we saw, let's say, a few weeks ago with the killing of the Jews in Pittsburgh. Everybody was shocked. Everybody was mourning. Everybody was crying. It was only later on you see articles about the people, and we learn more about the people. And that's why it talks about Yitzchak. I mean, Abraham cried. He had an emotional mourning, and it was just about her. It was almost that there was no specific person. There was a loss. However, it says that he made a hesped on Sarah. He mentioned Sarah specifically because it is important, and it is a duty of the family at a funeral to make a hesped, to tell details about the individual, to learn more about the person in detail so we really understand the true loss of this individual. And no one, I think, at an early age is closer to a person other than a sibling. And here we have one sibling, my wife Sheila, who's going to give you more details specifically about Sarah and why she is such a wonderful, important person, and the loss that we feel now is really so great.
Susan's sister Sheila.
There's not much more for me to say. Everybody has said everything so beautifully. We're all here today mourning the loss of a mother, a grandmother, and most of all, my sister, Susan Borger. She was truly one of the bravest people I ever knew, and she was a wonderful role model for me. I could not have chosen a better big sister to lead the way. We had a wonderful childhood. No lavish vacations, not even camp, not even day camp, but somehow we were happy. We all managed to laugh, and if we had no toys, I remember taking a wooden, I don't even remember what this is like, when I was probably 3 years old, we took a folding chair, put a belt on it, made believe it was a horse, and that's what we did. It sounded like we had nothing, but I remember we did that back in the Bronx, so I was really little then. I always looked up to her until I turned about 11, and then she started looking up at me. I was 7 inches taller than her. She taught me important things. She taught me how to do the liberty reverse with the and cha-cha. And I was probably 6 years old and I knew how to do that. Probably could have gone Dancing with the Stars. I don't know what else I have here. We would harmonize a lot, along with my cousin Marilyn, who lived upstairs, who was like a second sister. Although they were very close in age, it was like having twins that knew how to do everything. And Susie knew English, math, Marilyn knew languages. If Susie was good in science, Marilyn was good in something else. So I had both of them to compete with. And she lived up, until they got married, they lived upstairs. We were even on, I don't know, I'm sure Marilyn remembers. I don't remember how old we were, but I had a cousin who's since passed away. Now, can you give his name? I'm drawing blank. He was the choir leader for Moshe Savitsky in Brooklyn. And I don't know how he ended up getting us on WEBD radio, the radio that speaks your language. Remember that WEBD? And we sang. I don't know why they even put us on. I mean, we were pretty good for little kids, but I guess they were desperate to fill some airwaves. But and I'm sure Marilyn remembers that. She was so smart, although I didn't tell her often enough how smart she was. I remember one year in high school, it was either my freshman year or my sophomore year, I was having anxiety attacks. We were having regions. We never had regions in elementary school. She actually sat up with me and taught me probably an entire term's worth overnight. I mean, I had to be a pretty good student because I was able to grasp it, but she was a great teacher. Don't remember how well I did, although I know I did okay, but I'll never forget the all-nighter that she pulled with me. After she had Karen and Ellie, she had twins. They were born prematurely and did not make it. They did not survive, but somehow she picked herself up, braced herself, and knew that Ellie and Karen needed a mother, and she could not fall down and not handle it. So she did. That was something that I remember. I think I was pregnant with Robin, and she was pregnant with the twins, and it was my first, and it was her, let's say, third and fourth. I learned so much from her then. And I was in Chicago alone when I had Robin. But how could you compare what she had just gone through? I don't know where I am. Several years later, she had Jeffrey, who was a great source of comfort to her, especially lately. She leaves behind 3 children and their spouses, Karen and Mark, Ellie and Iris, Jeffrey and Aviva, along with her 6 grandchildren, Ari and Danny, David and Renee, Max and Ami. I hope I'm not leaving anyone out here. She was so happy to come back to New Jersey this past year for Jeffrey and Aviva's wedding. She was glowing, she was beautiful, and she was so happy for him. the last few times that I was at Ellie's house, and Tina, Aviva was there. I think Jeffrey was there also one day, and I would tell her over and over, Jeffrey, he's so happy. She's so good for him. And that made her feel good. It made her feel really like she could rest now. For the past few weeks, she did stay with Iris and Ellie. There was simply no hesitation on their part. She was coming home to them. They provided her with everything they could. I must thank her, Iris especially, and Ellie also, for giving of themselves and giving so tirelessly, and the kids too, I'm sure. Things were not always so calm in the house for the last few weeks. Although she was very stubborn, as you've heard, I think I've inherited some of that myself. She fought so bravely for the past 3 years. I don't know. I don't think that I could have endured what she was going through, the constant transfusions and the chemo and finally the pain. Honestly, I never thought it would end this way. I just thought she would just go on. In fact, last week when I saw her, I said, I'll see you on your birthday, which is November 24th. And I truly do think that she would still be with us. A few years ago, before she got sick, we would go visit my parents, their Keter, which is where she's going. We would joke about it, make light about being the funeral and how many people we knew, and it was almost comforting. Oh, there's Aunt so-and-so, and there's Uncle so-and-so, and there, of course, was my mother and my father. And she said she's actually buying the plot near my mother and my aunt. And they said, are you crazy? What are you thinking about? And this is before she got sick. I said, why are you even thinking like that? Who am I going to go with? I used to go to her house. I'm the worst driver in the world. I would go to her house, and then we would switch cars, or she would take my car, and then we would continue on to the cemetery. I said, what are you talking about? You're not dying. You're not going anywhere. You have to continue to drive me to the cemetery. Anyway, she did buy it, and it gives me peace in a way to know that she's going to be with them, and they'll be taking care of each other. I was also, like Ari was sitting on the plane. We were at the airport pretty much all day and night last night. So I was writing these things down at the airport. And I really still can't believe that I'm saying this at her funeral. We didn't even think we'd be able to make it. They kept canceling the flights. We kept trying to get different flights. There was nothing available. And I thought to myself, what would she do? She would not let a little snow from airplanes that weren't flying stop her. She will come. And we ended up getting out. And we came home, I don't know, 1 in the morning or whatever. We were there all day yesterday. And that's basically it. She was a wonderful sister. She taught me a lot. I hope I was able to teach her a little bit also along the way. I want to ask Michaela from her if there's anything I said or did, which I'm sure I did and said, because we were sisters, and that's what sisters do. But I'll always remember her. I'll always love her.
Susan's very close friend, Barbara Kessin.
I only cry in the shower, so unless the emergency spigots go off, I think we might be okay. When Ellie asked me to speak last night, he may have heard the panic in my voice because I loved Sue. I knew her for decades, but I have really a terrible memory. People say they have bad memory. I really do. And I was worried that I wouldn't be able to retrieve remembrances of what we've done together. So I did a very smart thing. I called Judy Goldstein, who was one of our co-travelers, and I said, just jog my memory. Just remind me of some of the things that happened. And we spent 10 or 15 minutes on the phone, and she did. She reminded me of some of our adventures. And at the end of the conversation, I said, oh, Judy, you saved me. You have no idea. Thank you for all these stories. And she said, what a funny thing, Rabbi Lubin just said the same thing to me. I told him the same story. Well, this is not good for the Jews. So I was going to talk about Chayei Sarah, and I was going to talk about being the child of a Holocaust survivor. I was going to talk about our train trips, and so I have a bit. I want to start off by quoting Pirkei Avos, Perek Bet, Mishnah Yud Gimel. Su or ezehi derech tova she'ibach ha'adam. Go out and see what is a good way for a good path for people to follow. Rabbi Yoshua says, be a good friend or have a good friend. Rabbi Yossi says, shachein tov, be a good neighbor, have a good neighbor. The people in this room were good friends of Sue, good neighbors to Sue. She was a good friend to us and a good neighbor to us. And it's such a tribute to her to see how many people are here who flocked to her. For more than a decade, maybe two, we traveled to work together on New Jersey Transit in the mornings, 5 days a week. We talked about how much we loved our jobs. She at the OU, me at the Board of Jewish Ed. We talked about Israel. We talked about politics, parenting, parents. No Lashon Hara that I can remember. We called ourselves the Fearsome Fivesome. We were Judy Hassan, Judy Goldstein, Ann Novick, Rosie Bell, Sue, and myself. I hope you didn't count because that's more than five. But we rotated. We used to grab the seats that were facing each other in the train. So there would be two facing this way and three facing that way, and that way we could talk the whole way. And yes, we were rather rambunctious. We were having a lot of fun. We had a lot of laughs because Sue loved to laugh. And she had nicknames for us. That was her way of expressing affection. She would give you a pet name. So I was Babs. Ann Novick was Annie Franny. Rabbi Luban was Rabbi Luban. Judy Goldstein, I don't think had a nickname. It seems to me maybe Sue didn't like her as much as we thought she did. I don't know, but we all got along great. And in fact, on November 24th, I brought those cone-shaped party hats that kids wear at their parties, and we all put our hats on, the five of us. And we had blowers, those things. We did that. And when the conductor came around, I told him, when Sue wasn't looking, I asked him to go on the loudspeaker and wish Sue Borger a happy birthday. And he did. And the whole train sang happy birthday to Sue, happy birthday to you. If people wanted to sit in those seats, we would tell them, oh, we're sorry, this section is reserved. And eventually they figured it out over the years. Nobody tried to sit there. Sue came to my house for many Shabbatot and Chagim, including the Seder, and we loved having her and Jeffrey. And at that point in the Seder where it says, B'chol dor v'dor amdim aleinu l'chalotenu, in every generation they try to kill us, my mother-in-law would practically jump out of her seat and say, that's right, they killed my family, they tried to kill me, they're not going to do it. And Sue was right behind her saying, that's right, and how could you let that happen? And I'm telling you, if Avraham Avinu hadn't been the first one to say, Hashofet kol ha'aretz lo yaseh mishpat, the judge of the world, can you possibly not do justice? Sue would have said it in those words. She was very committed to righteousness. She had a very strong sensitivity to right and wrong. Any of you who were on her email list, you would get emails about, can you believe what the New York Times said today? Can you believe what the UN resolution was today? Can you believe that they didn't pick up my garbage until 4 o'clock? What kind of municipality is this? She had a lot of indignation, but it was righteous indignation. She also was very sensitive to male chauvinism. I don't think she would mind if I told some stories. She went to a seminar on male-female relations, how to better your relationship with whoever. And the speaker said, Doyles, the thing to do if you want to make your relationship work is give, 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 give. And Sue was incensed. Whatever happened to mutuality? Why is it the woman who always has to be the one to give? And every time she and I wouldn't see each other for a while, but we'd get together, we would look at each other, and instead of hello, we would say, give, 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 give. And then we would just hug each other and laugh. I won't take much longer because I know it's Arab Shabbos. I don't know about your kids, but Sue was a gourmet chef. She loved experimenting with exotic ingredients. She loved modeling, but she was a Betty Crocker, right? I want to give her her due. She was not materialistic by any means. She was happy for other people. She was a terrific seamstress and would sew for you. She made a lot of her own clothes. She took pride in her home, and she was a wonderful gardener. And when she had free time, if it wasn't pouring, she would be out on her hands and knees cultivating the flowers, and she loved them. And I think that anybody who's a lover of nature, I think that's an expression of spirituality. And Sue, in that sense, and other senses, was very spiritual. She loved Jews. She loved Judaism. She loved Israel like crazy. Sue was courageous long before her battle against cancer. On 9/11, they came out of the subway and she realized right away that the pieces of paper that were floating down and the chunks of concrete were not another ticker tape parade. She knew something terrible had happened, and she grabbed Judy, and she had her wits about her. She was so smart and so sensible. And she said, we're going to the pier because we're going to get on the Staten Island ferry and get as far away from here as we can. And her reasoning was, she said, they're not going to bomb Staten Island. What's Staten Island? That's the safest place to be. And the next day, she was back at the OU because people have to get paid. And she schlepped herself in there. She took her HR work very seriously, but she never lost her sense of humor. And I'm going to tell you a story, and Rabbi Lubin is not going to listen to this. And if you tell him I told it, I'm going to deny it. She came to work one day, and in the course of her HR work, she had a meeting with one of the Rebbeim in his office, and the door was not all the way shut, but somewhat closed. And someone had to speak to the rabbi, so that person knocked on the door, and Sue called out, 1 second, let me get my clothes back on. That was her, right? She had a mischievous sense of humor. She was fiercely independent. She was uncompromising. She was brave. Those qualities stood her in good stead these last 3 years. She loved her family. She loved her friends. We all loved her. She loved her sister, her cousins. I remember how she took care of her friend Doug. I know how she took care of her parents, and children see that. So all of us who have parents, be good to them, because your kids see how you're behaving, and that's how they're going to be with you. And her kids, wives, and spouses, you guys, untold nachas. She appreciated, she saw it, and all of us are so admiring. And I will end with a pasuk that all of us friends, it will resonate with all of us, from Shmuel Aleph, Perek Yud. V'nefesh Yehonatan hikshira b'nefesh David. The soul of Jonathan was tied to the soul of David. V'ye'ahavehu Yehonatan k'nafsho. And Jonathan loved him as he loved himself. We love you, Missy Sue. It's hard to say goodbye, but you're with your parents now, and your aunt and uncle, and you're going to be with us at Smachot, and we're going to be with you when Mashiach comes, which should only be in Tehran.
I have to say the funeral has been a tremendous nechama for me already. So thank you. Try to get through this. Sometimes I'm emotional. I did go to camp, sleepaway camp for the food. So I mean, it wasn't in my remarks, but thank you for, it's true. On behalf of the family, thank you. Thank you to the doctors and nurses and aides who tended to Mom with love and care. Thank you to the Highland Park Edison Chavra for your visits, davening, keeping Mom top of mind, even when she went down to Florida. Thank you to the Torah Or Boca community for the warmth and sensitivity you showered upon Mom. The meals, trips to the hospital, and day-to-day efforts, many of which we don't even know about. Thank you. To my siblings, Karen and Jeffrey, for the trips, visits, and efforts, and to their spouses, Mark. It was never going to be easy to be married to Mom's only daughter. But you always put family first. Dedication. Aviva. She entered this family while Mom was already very ill, and she won us all over right from the start, how you jumped in to help Mom with love and with grace. Iris. You're a role model for us. Words do not do justice. The levels of Gemilas Chasadim have exemplified in just the past few months. You recovered from your July organ donation just in time to take Mom into our home. My last call from Florida for Mom's return, when we explored the possibility of bringing Mom home for her final day. You said 3 unequivocal words. We got this. You're amazing. Vodata Hahem et Haderech Zu Gemilut Chasadim. Tehillim Group, night before her June 2018 surgery in Miami, I set up a WhatsApp group to update friends and family about Mom's progress. I asked for a single round of Sefer Tehillim over the course of the day. The call to arms was met in under an hour's time. Within a day, Sefer Tehillim had been completed many times over. Instead of disbanding, the Tehillim continued without interruption through 3:28 a.m. Thursday morning. Zelda Wildman sang Tehillim from Israel just before Mom passed. People who had never met Mom but felt connected to her in some way, shape, or form had added themselves to the group to participate. Mother was moved and inspired and kept afloat by all the tefillos, and the family was strengthened for months as well. Mi K'Amcha Yisrael. Thank you. Mom suffered through prolonged illness. We hope these Yisurin serve as kapara ba'olam hazeh before entrance to Olam Haba. Baruch Hashem, the past 3 years, while incredibly grueling for Mom day to day, have come with many wonderful brachos and milestones. Since her diagnosis, she was blessed to witness and celebrate her 70th birthday, her oldest grandson David's bar mitzvah, her youngest granddaughter Renee's bat mitzvah, her gifting a pair of tefillin to my son Max, Yitzchak, named after her father, who smuggled his tefillin into a slave labor camp during the Shoah, the risk of his life. Her oldest grandchild, Ariel's graduation from high school, her daughter-in-law Iris's gift of a kidney to a 68-year-old stranger, and perhaps the greatest of life, and the one that she was pushing for, her baby Jeffrey, wedding to Aviva, which took place in May. Her mom looked radiant, walked him down the aisle unassisted, and danced together with the entire family the Simcha Gemura. At the time of diagnosis, it was sort of this Faustian bargain. It was a question of if you could live 1 year with a good quality of health, the quality of life, or 2 years with a terrible quality of life, and I can't deal with suffering. So I was sort of pushing with, maybe just, be comfortable, don't go through all the treatments, don't do all the chemo, just make the best of. And she looked at me without reservation or hesitation, and she said, what if they find the cure in the 2nd year? So they didn't find the cure, but Hashem delivered another bracha, and she was zocheh to walk Jeffrey down the aisle. And it was amazing. And we're very, very grateful for HaKadosh Baruch Hu for extending her life. My most vivid early childhood memory is her coming to my room each night and singing me to sleep. She was a young mother in her early 30s, at the time very pretty, gentle, loving, and tender. And she had the most beautiful voice, and she sang. Taught me Yiddish songs that she learned from her parents as a child. Rajin Kesmis Mandlin, Neufin Pripachik. Songs I later incorporated into my Musaf on the Yomim Noraim as a tribute to my heroes, her parents. An annual testimonial that our family and the Jewish people have more than simply survived the Shoah. Sewing amazing Purim costumes, elaborate curtains, leather pillows for each of her kids' beds, and later the grandkids' beds. Mom's handiwork remains on display through Shabbos this morning in Congregation All Demet down the block. She made the front bima cover, not a special order from Eichler's. Simple brown felt with gold trim. The fabric was purchased from the Mill End shop on Route 18. Sewn in her basement at home to fit the specs of the bima with no inscription on the front. That's right, no dedications, no credits. Modestly handmade over 35 years ago and still in use to this day. Over 40,000 minyanim led atop her handiwork on the bima. Sacrificed years after burying my twin sisters, who passed premature, as Sheila mentioned. Single mother of 3, with Jeffrey just 1 year old. She returned to work full-time, traveling 5 days a week into the city to provide for her family and keep us in our childhood home to avoid any additional life disruption. She epitomized the definition of self-determination. Through thick and thin and through sweat equity, Mom provided. She modeled her life after that of her survivor parents. On a modest income and under difficult circumstances, she lived Ben Franklin's proverb, a penny saved is a penny earned. Lived a life of relative austerity. She instilled in us that the principle of Bal Tashkos extends well beyond food and taught us the value of a dollar. Her family was her first priority. To be perfectly clear, we always had what we needed and never felt deprived, but there was no frivolous excess. Gvura. Mom was a strong, independent Jewish woman, and her legacy in that regard is secure. Look no further than her daughter and her 3 granddaughters, all bright, ambitious, outspoken, and strong. I never met anybody more strong-willed and determined. Her life's message was consistent. Do what is right and not what is easy or popular. Mom believed in standing straight and strong and was unapologetic for expressing heartfelt positions, even if it meant putting her job on the line. She was uncompromising in her yashras. She couldn't tolerate foul play of any kind, not on the personal level and not in the organizational context. Yasita hayashar v'hatov. Mom told it like it is 100% of the time. Everyone always knew where they stood with her. She didn't sugarcoat. And speaking with us, it didn't really matter. She spoke her truth in good times as well as in difficult times. One of the most inspiring mitzvot that she exemplified was kibbud av v'aim. There was nothing Mom didn't do for her parents. Mom settled them from Canarsie to town in their later years. And it was for us all upside, the enjoyment of grandma's soup at a moment's notice, and the zechut to sit with grandpa on the Yom Norah was unparalleled. For Mom, caring for both parents into their 80s and 90s was a labor of love. It didn't matter what, when, or where. If there was a need, she was in the trenches, making certain it was met. I just want to quickly mention the presence of Rabbi Rabinowitz. I didn't cry when anybody came in. I gave a lot of hugs. I held it together. And then I saw Rabbi Rabinowitz. Rabbi Rabinowitz is here to be Machaber, my mother. And he is the son of the Manashvitcher Rebbe. My grandfather davened in his shul. Rabbi Rabinowitz at the time was a young man and knew my grandfather from a very, very early age. And his father was my grandfather's Rav until my grandfather came for his final years. Thank you for coming. Brought a tear to my eye. Communal service. Her professional life was dedicated to public service. From her first job out of grad school, teaching in public school in the Bronx, followed by three-decade Jewish communal hat trick. Hero of Limudat Torah, serving the broader Jewish community, teaching Torah to public school students as a principal in Talmud Torah in Summit, New Jersey. Advocacy for Medinat Yisrael, working directly with Ambassador Tekoa for the University of Ben Gurion in the Negev, and supporting the Orthodox Jewish community. Her longest tenure serving as Director of Personnel and Human Resources at the Orthodox Union. For her final decade, she fittingly circled back to help run the middle and back office of Karen's medical practice, working alongside her son and daughter. We had the amazing zechus to hold Mom in her final days. Jeffrey and Karen flew her home from Boca via air ambulance exactly 1 month ago. Mom was surrounded by family every day, and with limited remaining energy she had left, she accepted a handful of visitors in order to say goodbye. She then decided, unbeknownst to us, that she would not die in my home. At her request, Jeffrey and Karen transferred her to a local hospice facility on Wednesday night. And before the break of dawn Thursday, Mom had passed away peacefully and on her own terms, sparing her children and grandchildren the trauma of dying in our safe place under our roof. For the past few months, I considered that when this day would come, Mom would be watching us gathered here together at the threshold of Sharei Shemayim, quietly singing in her beautiful voice the lyrics of a Paul Anka song popularized by Frank Sinatra. You have to listen to these words. All I knew was the last line. And then I went and I looked up the words. I only knew the last line. But listen to it. And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I'll say it clear. I'll state my case, of which I'm certain. I've lived a life that's full. I've traveled each and every highway, and much more than this. I did it my way. Regrets I've had few, but then again, too few to mention. I did what I had to do, and I saw it through with exemption. I planned each charted course, each careful step along the byway, and much more than this, I did it my way. Yes, there were times, I'm sure Mom knew, when I bit off more than I could chew. But through it all, when there was doubt, I ate it up and spit it out. I faced it all, and I stood tall and did it my way. I've loved, I've laughed, I've cried. I've had my share of losing. And now, as tears subside, I find it all so amusing. To think I did all that, and may I say, not in a shy way. Oh no, not me. I did it my way. For what is man? What has he got? If not himself, then he has not. To say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who kneels. The record shows I took the blows, and I did it my way. Yehi nishmatat tzura b'tzur hakayim.
Please rise for the Kabbalah.
Al kanfei hashchina v'mazot Kedoshim u'tehorim kizar harakia mazhirim Es nishmas imi morasi shal choli olamot Bavur shemishpachto yitnu tzedaka Yad hazkaras nishmasa V'gan Eden tehenenu chasa Lachem arachamim Yastireha V'seisek nafal li'olamim Mitzor hachayim es nishmasa Adonai asop v'sanuach v'shalom al
And we will be allowed to be on until the end of the cul-de-sac. The interment will take place at the Washington Cemetery in North Brunswick. The Shiva will be as follows. From Motzei Shabbos until Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Shacharis Carol will be singing Shiva at her home, 84 North Mitchell Avenue, Livingston, New Jersey. Ellie and Jeffrey will sing Shiva at Ellie's home in Teaneck, 387 Buckland Avenue. From Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. through Thursday, 8 a.m. Shacharis. The entire family will sit together at Jeffrey's home. It's the home of Susan's, Shalom, 13 Fair Hill Road, Edison, New Jersey. There will be a minyan and Teaneck and Edison and Livingston, 8 a.m. Shacharis, and it's a lot of this one.